today we're talking about the story of Jesus calming the storm. And this, like many of the stories in the Gospels, is just so rich with teachings and with metaphor. But the first thing we're going to look at today is the fact that when this whole thing happened, Jesus was napping in the stern of the boat. I love that. I've seen even pillows that say, Jesus napped, be like Jesus. That's where I got the idea for the talk title. If it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for us. So during this time, Jesus was moving along the various small villages on the Sea of Galilee and speaking to the multitudes, and he often had a lot of people around him. And because he was such a charismatic speaker, a lot of folks came out to see him. And they brought their sick and invalids and people that they wanted to be healed too. So he always had these people around him. And I'm assuming he loved that work, but it also wore him out. Like those of us that work with people, we know that. You know, I'm about as extroverted as it can get, and I love people. But after I've spent time with people, I need to go and have some rest and some time to myself. So Jesus experienced that same drain, that depleted, energetically depleted state. And he needed to rest. He knew he needed that time away. And throughout the Gospels, there are little stories about Jesus going away from the disciples or away from the crowds to spend time in quiet and meditation and prayer and contemplation so that he could replenish himself, so that he could continue doing the work that was his life's purpose. And so Jesus, how many people take naps? Now tell the truth now. Okay, looks like maybe about half of you. So napping seems to be sort of a lost art in our culture. Maybe it's just gone underground. Like you take naps, but you don't tell anybody that you do it. But I know that in other parts of the world, that siesta time in the afternoon is really built into the rhythm of their day. And I certainly experienced that when I lived in Mexico. You know, dad comes home from work, kids come home from school, and the family spends some time together and eats together, and then there's a period of rest. Now that may be changing in modern Mexican culture, but it seems like it's something that has been lost in our own culture. And in fact, in our culture, naps seem to be frowned upon. Like it's not in keeping with the American work ethic, right? That you're supposed to be productive all the time. We have power nap. Yeah, power nap. Oh my God, even your naps have to be powerful and supercharged, right? But it seems that in our culture we have this idea that you're not supposed to be sleeping during the day. In fact, our American culture is so obsessed with productivity that Americans are some of the most on the planet, especially if you compare it to other developed nations. CNBC reports that Americans get the least amount of paid vacation in the developed world, and therefore take the shortest amount of vacation days of any people in the developed world. In fact, more than half of all Americans don't even take the paid vacation time they have. That's just nuts, I'm sorry. Why would you do that? But in addition to that, obviously there are many, many workers that don't even get paid vacation time. Did you know the U.S. is the only advanced economy in the world that does not guarantee its workers paid vacation time? That's not a distinguishing thing we really want to have. It wasn't always the case. This was not always the case. But it seems to be getting worse. So people are getting less and less vacation time with every decade that passes. The CDC reports that 1 in 3 Americans don't get enough sleep. Are you one of those? So looking at these statistics, is it any wonder then that the New York Times reports that Americans are the most stressed people in the world? In fact, a poll last year showed Americans reporting stress, anger, and worry at the highest rates in decades. This is not a good situation. I think it's safe to say that Americans are exhausted and stressed, overworked, and overwhelmed. It seems that we are a culture that has forgotten how to rest, and we know that it's affecting our health. According to the CDC, 1 million Americans have chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, I know that chronic fatigue syndrome is, it's very difficult to understand all the factors that go into it. It's not as simple as just needing rest. But certainly, the stress of our lives is not helping matters. And we know that the stress and our tendency to overwork is affecting our health in things like high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, etc. So me, I'm a napper. And I owe this to my son. I was never a napper. I was one of those people like, you don't sleep during the day. But I can honestly tell you that I would not have survived my son's childhood if I had not learned to nap, just hands down. I also would not have survived seminary if I had not learned to nap. And probably a whole host of other challenges I've faced over the past 20 years if I didn't have that nap practice. Some of you may know I also have an autoimmune disorder of the thyroid, which makes me tired a lot. So I have to nap. I have to rest. Nap is an institution at Casa Jelinch. If, between 3 and 5, don't expect us to be available because we're down for the count. The dog, the cats, everyone. But many people feel that it's not okay to take naps, and there's shame around napping. But rest is not just about sleeping. That's one very important part of rest, but there's a lot more to rest. In fact, I found a meme that showed 9 types of rest, and I just wanted to go through these because it helps give us an idea that there are other types of rest that we need, that are so important, besides just sleeping. So the first one is time away. So to me, this means time away from whatever your norm is. Whatever your normal routine is, you need time away from that, a change of pace. Number 2 is permission to not be helpful. Now, I don't think this means all the time. You don't ever have to be helpful. I think it means especially if you are a helper person or you're someone in a caring occupation, that you need to have permission to have periods of time where you don't have to be the helpful one. You don't have to be the one raising your hand. Number 3 is something unproductive. Doing something unproductive. How many people struggle with this? I have a really hard time doing something not productive. I want even my downtime to be productive, right? This is part of the problem. That's the idea of like coloring or doing things that don't really have a real end purpose, that you're just doing them just for the sake of doing them. Very hard for me, and probably I'm assuming some of you relate to that. Again, in our productive culture, we feel like we're supposed to be productive 24/7. It's crazy. So these are ways that we can try to rest, is by allowing ourselves to do something that's unproductive. Connection to art and nature. Obviously, these are important things that we all need for our well-being as humans. Solitude, to recharge, just like Jesus went away from the multitudes to spend time in solitude in order to recharge himself and restore that depleted energy. A break from responsibility, especially if you're a parent or a caregiver, which many of us are, caring for either children or older aging parents. A break from being the responsible one. That is a type of rest. Stillness to decompress. Time spent in a safe space, whatever that means for you. A safe space is a place where you can let down your guard, where you don't have to be on, right? And alone time at home. Boy, I know this is a big one for me. When Alexander goes and spends the weekend at my mom's, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit on my couch and be like, oh, I'm alone in my house. Look at this, it's quiet. No one's bothering me. Just that, that's a luxury to me, to just be alone at home. So another really important type of rest is what in the Bible is called the Sabbath. So most of us are familiar with the 4th commandment that's found in Exodus and Deuteronomy. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. So In the creation story, one of the creation stories in Genesis, we know the drill, right? God created everything in the universe in 6 days and then rested on the 7th day. And that day has become a holy day, a day of Sabbath. And Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have some sort of Sabbath practice. I also found that there are actually at least one branch of Buddhism that has a day of rest each week. So there has long been a connection between spirituality and rest, and many, many religions advocate setting that time aside, not just for rest, but also for worship and spiritual practice, which are in fact a type of rest. But one of the problems in Jesus' time is that things have become very legalistic. And so during that time, Sabbath was such a law that you could even be stoned to death or put to death for failing to observe the Sabbath. Now, Jesus saw the ridiculousness in that, right? And his response to that was to say, no. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So the Sabbath is supposed to be a practice that helps us. It's not about pleasing God or complying with legalistic rules that make us be good observers of our religion. The Jewish people at that time had gotten a little off track in terms of what these things were meant to do, and Jesus advocated bringing back the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. Jesus frequently healed people and did other types of ministry work on Sundays, on the Sabbath, which was not Sunday then, on the Sabbath. And that was, in fact, one of the things that got him crucified, because he wouldn't toe the line. If there was someone that needed to be healed and it was the Sabbath day, he healed them. And the Pharisees and scribes did not take well to that. So it's always been important to have that one day a week to unplug and rest, to dedicate to family, to spiritual practice. And this can be a very powerful practice for us to have, but in modern times can be very difficult, right? I mean, it's to the point where there's no sacred Saturday or Sunday or any day of the week, really. Things can be scheduled 24/7, and it's very hard to take that day. If you're able to do that, I've always thought that would be such a cool thing, to really take one whole day a week. But since that's probably not a very likely thing for many of us to actually do, it doesn't have to be about a certain day of the week, and it doesn't have to be a whole 24-hour period. We can bring a practice of observing the Sabbath into our life by taking smaller periods of rest throughout the week. And this time of rest, of coming away from the world for a while, is such an important part of the rhythm of our life. So as I mentioned, in the creation story, God created the universe in 6 days and rested on the 7th. Now in Unity, you know that we don't look at these stories as being literal or factually or historically correct. We look at them as having spiritual meaning, as being metaphorical. And so what this story tells us is that after a period of work or creation, it's important that we then rest. And it's telling us that this is sort of a prescribed rhythm that's a really good rhythm for human beings to have in their lives. So how many people, after you complete a task or a project, take that little Sabbath time to rest, to integrate, to think about what has happened and process it, right? Or how often do we just jump into the next thing? Sort of skipping that step, thinking that that's being productive. But what this story is telling us is that that's not productive. That period of rest is such an important part of the rhythms of our lives. It's when we take stock, we reflect, we process, we allow whatever we've done or what has happened to integrate, to be integrated into our lives. Ellen Davenport, who's a prominent Unity author you may have heard of, she wrote an article called 6 Ways to Create Your Own Sabbath. And she's explaining how important this Sabbath practice is. And so some of the things that she advocates are a screen-free day. Okay, now again, how many of us are likely to take a whole screen-free day? Does anybody actually do that? I'm lucky if I take a screen-free hour. But again, we don't want to not do it because we can't do it for a whole day, right? We could start with periods. We could start with Sunday afternoon. We're going to put the phone away. Have you ever left your phone at home on accident and realized that the world didn't actually stop rotating because you didn't have your phone with you? I know you were annoyed the whole time looking for that thing. I was. But we actually won't die if we leave our phones at home for a while. She talks about spending time in nature. Again, obviously this is such an important thing for humans to be more connected to the planet and fresh air and seeing green, growing things. She talks about, how do you say this, Lectio Divina, which is an ancient practice of reading sacred scripture and then a period of reflection, and then reading more and then a period of reflection. So that could be whatever is sacred reading for you. It could be the daily word. It could be any other type of sacred literature that you find helpful. Now, I don't know if Ellen has a Catholic background, but she mentions a 9-hour novena. I'm not sure where that came from, but the idea is having a 9-hour period where you're going to stop every hour and spend time in prayer and meditation. And we've talked about this for years. You know, I think some of us even got those little bracelets that go off every hour reminding you to rest. This is how bad off we are. We need bracelets to remind us, that buzz every hour to remind us to rest. Obviously spending time in silence. And then she also mentions lighting a candle. Now, why would lighting a candle be a Sabbath practice? Well, if you think about it, our Sabbath practice goes back to the Jewish Shabbat. And that's what they did, they continue to do it today. Lighting a candle and saying some prayers to usher in the Sabbath time. And so these ancient practices can still be very powerful. Spending some time to light a candle and sit quietly for a few minutes. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing. So the way Davenport describes it is she says, this is how the Sabbath works. We've done all we need to do for now. Sabbath is the exhale at the end of it. It's the sigh as we settle into rejuvenating sleep. And so again, it's about that rhythm of creation and then rest. Creation and then rest. It's important to realize that that period of rest is not wasted time. Not only is it good for us, it's really not wasted time. Davenport says Sabbath is the incubator for wisdom. That means that during that time of rest, it may seem like nothing's happening, but a lot is going on internally. I know I experienced this with seminary. Seminary was like your mind being blown on a daily basis, and there really wasn't a lot of time to process it. And so when I graduated in June, I found that I really needed a lot of downtime. You know, I needed time to do non-ministry related things, to just watch TV, to go on walks with my son, to just relax and read things that weren't spiritual. And I know that that wasn't wasted time because everything that I had been through was processing. It was integrating. It was becoming part of me. And that period of time was so important. I feel in a lot of ways like I'm still kind of in that time, I'm still processing. So it's a valuable time spent. Let's look at metaphysically what the Sabbath means. If you're new to Unity or you don't have a real handle on what metaphysics is, it just means a metaphorical or allegorical or symbolic understanding of Scripture. So there's something that's going on the literal level, and then there's something that's going on, I want to say below, but meta actually means above. So metaphysics would be what's happening above that, what's happening at the next level. And so Fillmore, Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, in the Revealing Word, and we had the reading in the scripture readings. Revealing Word is a dictionary of metaphysical definitions. So he says the true Sabbath is that state of spiritual attainment where man ceases from all personal effort and all belief in his own works and rests in the consciousness that the Father abiding in me doeth the works. Now he's quoting scripture. What he means is we've done our part, now we rest and we let God, divine mind, source, do the rest of the work. So he says, when we understand the true spirit of the Sabbath, we cease following prescribed rules. Again, it's not about, pleasing God or doing our religion properly or whatever, laid down by a church, and we open our minds to God's rest and peace. We rest from outer work, cease our daily occupation, and give ourselves up to meditation or the study of things spiritual. So metaphysically, the Sabbath represents taking a break from material consciousness. Okay, so in Unity we talk about the material world and the spiritual world. And so the material world, Fillmore liked to call it sense consciousness, meaning our human experience, basically what we can see and feel and touch and hear. It's taking a break from that and spending time in the spiritual realm. Spending time in focusing on matters of the Spirit. And he says the Sabbath is kept any time we enter into spiritual consciousness and rest from thoughts of temporal things. So I want to just talk a little bit about the peace be still part of the story that I told earlier. So when Jesus rebuked the winds, saying, "Peace, be still," and he calmed the storm, this is considered one of Jesus' miracles. In Unity, we don't get very concerned about whether the miracles of Jesus are literal miracles or not. Some believe they are, some don't. It's just not a concern of us because we don't look at the literal meaning, we look at what they represent. And so, metaphysically, this story of calming the storms represents our power to calm our inner storms, right? Just like I was teaching the children. We all have that place of calm and peace within. And we can go there during times of stress and anger and overwhelm. How do we do that? Well, we have to cultivate our ability to find that place, right? So it's about spiritual practice. Whatever that is for you, prayer, meditation, contemplation, time spent sitting quietly in nature, it doesn't have to look a certain way. However you find that place. This is why a daily meditation practice of some sort is so important because, and Tara Brock, my favorite meditation teacher, we're sort of, we're carving out that pathway home. Every time we meditate and go to that place, we're making that pathway back there stronger and deeper and clearer, clearing out the weeds, the things that get in the way of that. And so we have to cultivate that ability. And the more we do it, the more we find that we can get to that place more quickly and more easily. The more we come to know that place, we can find it faster. And so when the storms are raging, as they inevitably will, does anybody have no storms in their life? I didn't think so. So the storms are always going to be going on. I'm still learning this as an adult. It's like the to-do list is never going to get done. The things coming down the pike are never going to stop. Those storms are always going to be raging. But this story tells us that we can learn to find that place of peace in the midst of all of that. We can say to the storms of our life, "Peace, be still." I read somewhere that the original Hebrew root of "be still" actually doesn't mean be quiet, it means let go. And so peace, be still, becomes let go and let God. After calming the storm, Jesus said to his disciples, because he liked to bust their chops a lot, right? So he said, "Where was your faith? Why were you afraid?" What that piece of it is saying is that it is our faith in what in Unity we call the first principle, our faith in that one power and one presence God the good. It's our faith in that, the fact that we believe that God is everywhere present and that we're never alone. That's what allows us to be able to experience that peace and calm. So our faith is what gets us there. So we can learn to calm the storms of our own lives. Just as Jesus took time away from the multitudes, time in rest, time in quiet contemplation, in order to replenish himself so that he could continue to do the work that was his life's purpose, we too must take time for self-care. Not because it's trendy, right? But because that's how we replenish ourselves so that we can continue doing what is our life's work, what is our purpose. We can't do it or be any service to anyone if we're exhausted, worn out, depleted, right? And so the importance of a consistent spiritual practice, it can help us learn to get to that place more quickly and to recognize it. And so peace, be still. And I love that. It's one of the most repeated phrases in the Bible. It's a reminder for us to stop, to pause, to take time for sacred rest. It's a reminder to not let life pass us by in busyness and stress. It's a reminder for us to be present, to not miss the life that is right in front of us, that we sometimes miss because we're so busy. You know, stop the glorification of busy. I've seen that meme on Facebook. Stop the glorification of busy. Being busy is not a badge of honor to wear. We're missing the life that is right in front of us. So it's a reminder to release our attachment to the material world and focus on matters of the Spirit. Focus on what's important. It's a reminder to let go and let God. To trust that we have done all we need to do, and now it is time for us to rest and let Spirit do the rest. Most importantly, it's a reminder that that deep peace and rest that we seek, it's not found out there somewhere. It is only experienced as the presence of God within us. We can't go and get it on the internet. We can't pay for it. There's no fast track to it. It's right here. Rumi said, the only real rest comes when you're alone with God. So I say to you, and I invite you to say to yourselves and to the storms of your own life, peace, be still. Will you guys say it with me?
Peace, be still.
Practice for just a few moments this type of sacred rest that we're talking about. So just allowing yourself to get comfortable where you're sitting, become aware of your body, how it rests its weight on the pew, and the pew beneath you supports you. And allow your body to become quiet. Allow the hands to relax, the shoulders to relax down. Unclench the jaw. Allow the muscles of the face to relax. And come into that place of peace. To help us arrive, I'd like to share this poem by Dana Falls called Walk Slowly. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still, and just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. So just practice allowing yourself to rest. Relaxing as you breathe in, relaxing as you breathe out. Saying to yourself, peace, be still. Peace, be still. So make note of what this place feels like. Remember the peace and the rest that you experience here. And remind yourself of that pathway back home so that you can find this place and come to it anytime, knowing that the presence of God, that one power and one presence that we call God the Good, is here just waiting for us to spend time in that sacred rest.
I rest in God, God rests in me. I rest in comfort and release. I rest in God, God rests in me. I rest in comfort and in peace. I rest in God, God rests in me. I rest in comfort and release. I rest in God, God rests in me. I rest in comfort and in peace.
So as we bring this time of meditation to a close, we return to this present moment now, this time and place, with a renewed sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the peace within, for the presence of God, for this spiritual community that supports us in our growth. And we say, thank you, God. Thank you, God.